Hello, and welcome. Thanks for coming to this talk on Google+ sign-in for Android developers. My name is Denison. I am a developer programs engineer on the Google+ developer relations team. And with me on stage, I have Tarle, who is a software engineer on the Google+ platform. So 8 weeks ago, we announced Google+ sign-in as the way for developers to integrate Google as a social identity platform. And with it, we launched some amazing features for Android developers, which help you to create a more engaging experience for your users and to grow your audience by providing new ways to do sharing that make it easy for your users and their circles to re-engage with your app. So out of interest, how many people in the audience are Android developers? Great, I'm in the right place. And how many of you have integrated a Google API with your Android app? Okay, a bunch of you, excellent. Okay, final question. How many people have already integrated Google+ sign-in with your app? Okay, a couple, not many, that's fine, great. So I think there's something in this talk for everybody. I'm going to introduce you, along with Wes, the new features in Google+ sign-in, and then we're going to show you just how simple it is to integrate Google+ sign-in into your app, and along the way, we'll point out some of the things that you might want to think about when you come to do this for real. So Google+ sign-in is available on the web, Android, and iOS. And although I'm going to focus on Android in this talk, I want to start with a feature which is actually implemented as part of web sign-in. And that's the ability for you to offer your Android app as part of the web sign-in flow. And we call that over-the-air installs. So in this example, which is TuneIn, that have integrated Google+ sign-in, it's a cool service. It lets me listen to my favorite radio stations on the web and mobile platforms. But let's imagine that I discover TuneIn via their website. They, of course, are going to want to offer me their Android app as part of the sign-in flow. And with Google+ sign-in, they can do exactly that. So seamlessly, as part of the sign-in flow, when I come to their site for the very first time, I can see, they'll show me a dialog, or Google will show me a dialog box which looks just like this. But only if I have a compatible Android device, and only if I don't already have TuneIn installed. And importantly, if I it'll be waiting for me. I will already be signed in to that device. When I launch TuneIn for the first time, I'll already be signed in without having to do anything. And that's because Google+ sign-in authenticates the user to the service and not to individual devices. That makes this process probably the most seamless app install process that you've seen. And from the user's perspective, it's completely like magic. Just to show you how simple it is to integrate over-the-air installs with your web service, if you've already added the web sign-in button to your website, it's literally a one-line change to add an Android package that you want to install as part of the over-the-air install process. You literally just say which package you want to install. Now, I'm not going to talk more about how to integrate Google+ sign-in with websites here, but if you get a chance to catch Adeosh and I's talk later on this afternoon, he'll be covering that in more detail. So let's cover some of the basics. Google+ sign-in is provided as part of Google Play services, which means that it already enjoys a huge install base of Android devices. And you as a developer can get hold of the libraries you need directly from the Android SDK. As well as providing the APIs for Google+ sign-in, Google Play Services also provides native API access for the Google+ APIs and a growing number of other Google APIs. Google+ sign-in integrates with the Android Account Manager, which means it uses the user accounts that are already on the device. And that means that the user doesn't have to keep typing their username and password because they authenticate with the device and not with each individual app. That's great for them because we all know that if you've chosen a strong password, then by definition it's difficult to type on a mobile keyboard. And it's great for your app because it means more of your users are signed in. Google+ sign-in is implemented on top of OAuth 2.0, But it really is the easiest implementation of OAuth 2.0 that you'll come across. It does all the heavy lifting for you, and it takes care of all of the OAuth 2 exchanges that you need to do, and all of the token management, so the token caching and the refreshing. And if you do want to use a Google API which is not part of Google Play services, you can still do that. All you need to do is include the scopes when you set up the Plus client in the first place, and then you can grab that token and use it with REST APIs and other client libraries. So I just want to show you quickly what it looks like when the user signs in with Google Plus Sign-In for the first time on an Android device. And I'm going to use this example from Banjo. When I click the Sign-In button, I get this native consent dialog. Now, as a developer, you don't need to worry about that. That's implemented as part of Google Play services. And because it's native, it keeps the user in the app, and it shows the user in a clear and consistent fashion what permissions are being requested by the app from them. Now, when we were creating Google Plus Sign-In, we asked users what they were most interested in from a social identity provider. And they came back to us with two major concerns. Firstly, they wanted to be sure that when they sign into an app with a social identity provider, that it wouldn't result in their friends getting spammed. And second, they wanted to be sure that the app activities that were written by the app they were signing into, they would have control over who gets to see those. So we've worked really hard with Google Plus Sign-In to make sure that the user stays in control. And that's what this dialog is about. So the line items that appear on this permissions dialog will depend on which scopes you've asked of the user. What we're showing here is the default scope, which is plus.login. And that gives your app access to the user's basic profile information, which means their name, their ID, their profile picture, and any information they've chosen to make public on their profile. It also gives you access to their social graph. But of course, although that defaults to the user's entire social graph, they have the option to customize that. So if they click the link that says change who this app can see, they get to customize which circles are provided to the graph, to the app. And although the app doesn't actually get to see the circles, the names of the circles themselves, it will get the list of all the users in those. Lastly, the item at the bottom there allows us to control who gets to see app activities which are written by this app. And again, it defaults to your circles, but there's a really clear upfront option there that allows you to keep them private if you select only you. Of course, you can customize those. If you want to, if I have climbing buddies and I have a climbing app, then this allows me to keep those app activities focused and relevant. So Google Plus Sign-In gives you access to all that information. But what I'm going to do now is hand over to Wes, and he's going to show us just how easy it is to implement it in our app.
So let's see how we add sign-in with Google to our existing Android app. We're going to add a sign-in button to our layout, and then we'll add to our activity a Plus client and bind that to the activity's lifecycle. So to add the button, we're just going to make a plain layout change. The sign-in button is just a plain Android view that you can add to any layout, but it has inside it all of the resources and assets that you need to match Google branding guidelines, and it has translated text so that you can launch the button on any language. In our activity, we'll add a Plus client, and this is going to be our main context for interacting with Google Plus APIs on Android. So we recommend that each activity has a Plus client so that you can be sure that while the Plus client resources are in use, that you have an actual user engaged in your app. So let's tie that Plus client to our activity lifecycle. In onCreate, we'll initialize it, and then in onStart, we'll connect, and in onStop, we'll disconnect. We'll use the Plus client builder to initialize it. So this is where you configure how you're going to use Google APIs with the Plus client. And here we'll declare a couple different kinds of activities that we'd like to send on the user's behalf to Google. Now these will show up in the consent dialog, so you'll want to make sure that you only choose the types of activity that your app's going to send, so you don't confuse the user when they see the consent. If you're using other Google APIs like Drive or YouTube, This is where you'd specify their OAuth scopes. And you'll notice that we don't mention an account name here. Google Play Services takes care of keeping the user's identity for your app so that you don't have to show an account chooser unless you want to. Once we have the Plus client initialized, we'll call connect and onStart. And this does two things. First, it sets up a service connection between your app and Google Play Services. And then it auto-logs in the user in case he's signed in before on the web or to your app. So you'll want to make sure to call connect in onStart so that you can capture all of those users that came to your app from our sign-in and OTA flow who are already signed into Google. This will let them sign into your app just seamlessly. In onStop, we'll call disconnect. And this is important to clean up any resources that are used both by the Plus client and your activity. So you'll be releasing the service connection here, and the service connection will also be releasing your activity. So you really have to call disconnect every time you call connect so that you don't leak. Now the connect call doesn't show any UI. That's sort of up to you. We wanted to make sure that you could send the user to the consent screen when you wanted. When you call connect, you can expect one of two callbacks. You'll get, if the user is already signed in on the web or to your app, you'll get onConnected. And here we can start using all of the Google Plus APIs provided by the Plus client. So we get the current person, and we can update our UI right here on the main thread. If the user's not signed in yet, then generally that's because they need a consent screen. And we tell you about that consent screen by giving you a pending intent wrapped inside this connection result. So we'll call you back with onConnection failed with the connection result. And since we have a sign-in button, we're just going to stash that connection result away until the user clicks it. But if you were showing a loading screen or a splash screen, you could start it directly here to show the user the consent and get signed into the app. So the sign-in button is a plain Android view, and we've attached our activity as an on-click listener. When the user clicks the button, we're going to start the resolution, and then expect a call to onActivity result with whether the user signed in or not in the consent screen. So in our onClick method, if we have a connection result, because we've got the onConnection failed callback, we'll call start resolution for result. And this just wraps the call to the pending intent so that you don't have to understand how to call a pending intent. It's kind of rough syntax. Then we'll get a callback to onActivity result, and if the user consented, we'll get a result OK. We'll connect the Plus client again and expect an onConnected callback. If the user canceled, then we'll get a result cancel, and we'll just hang out and wait until they click on the button again. So you can see it's just a few lines of code on top of what you've already got in your activity to get a user signed in and get access to our Google Plus APIs.
Awesome. So now we've got the user signed in. What can we do to enhance their experience in our app? Well, there's a few answers to that question, and the simplest from a Google Plus perspective would be to take the user's name and profile picture and make them feel at home in our app. But something you can do which is even more powerful would be to take the user's social graph and integrate it with your own data model and use that to provide interesting or useful insights into your data for the user. That's often termed in the industry social proof. So here we have a great example from Fancy. They have a stream which pulls in stuff from all over the world that people find cool and interesting and show it to me. Now that's a potentially huge data set, but if they integrate that stream with my social graph to filter it and to order it, then not only am I much more likely to see things that I find cool and interesting, but I'm also much more likely to engage when I see that one of my friends is engaged. If Vic Gandotra thinks that these shoes are cool, they must be cool. So Google Plus sign-in gives you access to the user's social graph. And what I'm going to do now is I'll hand over to Wes, and he'll show us, after we've got the user signed in, how we get access to that information.
So once the user's signed in and you have a connected Plus client, it's really easy to get access to their social graph. What we're going to do is call load people and then expect a callback to on people loaded. And that's it. This pattern of making a request directly from your activity and then getting a callback later with the result is common to all the APIs across Google Play services, and you'll see this in all of our Google Plus APIs. So we'll call load people and pass the visible collection. This is the set of people that your app is allowed to see in the user's social circles. If we were configuring it for best ordering, if you wanted to get close ties, you would set that here, or alphabetical ordering if you cared. Then we get a call to on people loaded. And here, if we're successful, then we'll get the people directly in a person buffer. Now, a person buffer is a lot like a cursor in terms of efficiency, so it's important that you close it when you're done. So you'll see here that we have the regular try finally block that you'd expect from a cursor, where we close the cursor in the finally. It's better than a cursor, though, because you get actual native typed access to the data inside it. So you can iterate through these people, and they're just exposed as a person model object. So you can get their display name and their image in a very natural Java way. And this really points to the power of Google Play services to deliver an API to your app, since you didn't have to decide what kind of HTTP stack you wanted or JSON parsing. Google handles auth and offline and caching and batching, so that you really just have access to this online data in a very native way directly in your activity where you need it to update your UI. And I think that's really cool.
All right. So it really is very simple to integrate Google Plus sign-in with your app. But of course, when you come to do this for real, there'll be a bunch of broader concerns that you need to take into account for your app. So for example, if your app integrates with a backend service, as many of them will, then you need to consider issues like, how do you pass the user's identity between them? And if you're going to make calls to third-party APIs, Google or otherwise, where are they made from? Are they made server-side or are they made client-side? If you choose to integrate multiple identity providers, as many of you will, then you need to think about how you harmonize the data models between them. And also, how you deal with some of the special cases that arise when a user can present multiple identities to your app. Now, I'm not going to go into details of those here, but what I do want to do is call out some of the other talks that are going on at Google I/O this year where we cover those issues in greater detail. So if you're interested in those, check those out. Now, for the stats geeks, we haven't forgotten about the analytics. So when you create your app, you create a project which allows you to use the Google Plus APIs and the sign-in API. And you have the option at that point to associate your project with a Plus page. If you do that, then you'll get access to analytics for Google Plus sign-in. Now, this is a sample app of mine, and clearly, I can see I need to do a bit more work, as I've only got 83 users signing in. But here, you can see how many people are signing into your app using Google Plus sign-in. You can see how many versions of your app have been installed via over-the-air installs, and who's using some of the new features that we're about to talk about, so app activities and interactive posts. So check this out. It's a really great tool to see the impact of integrating Google Plus sign-in in your app. So now I want to talk about one of the new features that we've launched with Google Plus sign-in, which is interactive posts. Interactive posts add action to Google Plus posts in a way that makes it easy for users and their circles to re-engage with your app. So we're used to the idea with a traditional Google Plus post of having a content target. So if you include a content target with your post, then Google will go and fetch some metadata, a title, description, a picture, and create a target in your post which is clickable and takes the user to the original content. With interactive posts, we've added an action target, a second target, in the form of a call to action button. And that takes the user not only to the content, but also then performs an action when they get there. So if I see a post like this in my stream on mobile, and I click that button, it will launch your app. It will provide your app with the information it needs to take me to the content I've requested, and then it will tell it that I want to perform an action, and your app can do that. So that, for me as a user, is a seamless experience. It takes me directly where I want to go, and it makes it incredibly easy for me to act. So we're seeing huge increases in levels of user interaction rate with these posts, so I would really encourage you to check them out. If a traditional post inspires user curiosity, then interactive posts get their attention. So I'll walk you through an example. Let's imagine that I'm using TuneIn on my Android device, and I want to with him. In TuneIn, I click the share button, as I would anyway, and it fires an intent which launches the share dialog within the Google Plus app as normal. Now, when they do that, they would provide some extra information that tells that includes in the intent that they want to include a call to action button, in this case, listen. So you can see, as normal, they're able to pre-populate the text, and you can see that I get the preview including the listen button. Now, because I'm sharing that directly with Wes, he will get a notification via the Google Notifier, not just on his mobile device, but across all Google properties, so on Search, on Gmail, on Maps. Let's imagine that he clicks the notification on his mobile device, so he's taken in and he sees the post on the G Plus stream on his Android device. There, he can see the Listen button, and when he clicks it, that fires an intent which will start the TuneIn app, and it will include the information which was inserted right at the beginning that tells the TuneIn app how to get to the content and the fact that I want to start listening. So the next thing that happens from Wes's perspective is that he's listening to the music and trying to understand why he ever listens to me when it comes to my taste. So that's all great. But what happens if he doesn't have the TuneIn app installed? Well, instead, he's taken to the App Store, to the TuneIn page, and he has the ability to install that app. When he clicks Install, it downloads and installs as normal, and he gets an Android notification that allows him to complete the action that he started in the first place. He clicks on that, and again, from his perspective, the next thing that happens is he's listening to the music. So that Play Store flow only happens if he doesn't have the app installed, but it's really powerful because it gives your users the tools when they're most excited about your service to share their excitement in a way that makes it easy for new users and their circles to engage with your app. So I'm now going to hand back to Wes, and he's going to show us how to add an interactive post to our app.
So first, I'll show you how to generate interactive posts with deep link IDs. And then I'll show you how to handle clicks on those posts on Android to take the user deep into your app. So you might be familiar with the standard action send intent on Android. That's the standard way to send snippets of text and URLs and images and everything else from app to app. So we built on top of action send in a couple important ways. First, we added support for deep link IDs. And just like a web URL can link deeply to a page on a website, a deep link ID can link directly into an activity and action inside your Android app. Second, we added support to specify a call to action button. Now, this is that button that drives engagement on your posts that takes the user to some action inside your app. So to create that interactive post, let's say that I want to share some music with Lee to improve his taste in music. I'm going to create a post by first setting up the content. And I'll set a URL, like I did before, and I'll set a deep link ID. This deep link ID, when Lee interacts with the post, will be sent back to your app and round trip. So you want to make sure that it uniquely identifies some content in your app and that it's meaningful to anyone who might see the post. Now that we've got the content configured, we'll add the call to action button. And here I choose listen because I want Lee to listen to the song. But there are 100 or so other actions that you could choose and apply to the same button from your app. So depending on what your app does with that action target, we're going to choose the verb. Now, similarly to the content, I'll choose a URL for the web and a deep link ID for mobile. That's iOS and Android. I build an intent by calling getIntent, and then call startActivity for result to launch the share box. Then the user can configure who it's going to share to. I would include Lee, and then hit post. So now that we have interactive posts with deep links in the Google Plus stream, how do you handle clicks on Android? We're going to export exactly one activity that exists only as a control to parse the deep link ID, then choose the right activity and action inside our app, and then send the user there, and that's it. So we'll declare it in our Android manifest and set exported equals true. Then we'll add this intent filter. This intent filter comes directly from our developer documentation, and you just paste it in here. And the intent filter plus your package name is what tells Google that your app's installed and ready to handle deep link IDs. Let's look at the implementation of this activity. In onCreate, we're going to parse the deep link ID and then decide, was this deep link from a content or from a call to action button? So if it was from a call to action button, we'll include an extra in our intent that we can tell our song activity to go ahead and start playing when it receives the intent. Then we call start activity on the intent that we built. And this is the important part that we call finish directly here in onCreate. And that way, this activity won't show any flicker to the user, and the user won't know it was there. So everything else, including generating notifications across Google properties and installing your app from the Play Store, is all handled by Google. So it kind of gets out of the way, and it lets you create posts that are more engaging for your users and focus on what you're going to do with that.
Awesome. So I want to finish up by talking about one last feature that we've launched with Google Plus Sign-In, and that is App Activities. So App Activities allow you, with your app, with user consent, to write activity to Google. So that might be music that the users listen to, movies they've watched, places they've checked in, or on Shazam, songs that I've discovered. Now, the first place that we chose to surface app activities was on the user's profile. So if someone in my circles takes a look at my profile, because I've given them permission, they can see the songs that I've discovered on Shazam. And if they click those links, it will take them through to the original content on Shazam. So the moment those app activities contain deep links as well. 2 weeks ago, we announced a new place that we're going to start surfacing app activities, and that's on Google Search. So if, for example, I search on Google Search for Fandango in this case, then I get the normal organic search results on the left, and on the right, I'll see a social card. Now, that already appears, and as now, because Fandango have an active Google Plus presence, I'll see there how many people are following them, or following their Plus page, and I'll have the ability to follow their Plus page directly from that social card. The bit that we're going to add is the next bit, the popular with Google Plus users. So this is an aggregated, anonymized context for Fandango that tells me what's going on based on the app activities that their users are writing from their app. Now that's great for the user because it means that when I search for Fandango, I get extra context before I've even clicked through to their site. And from Fandango's point of view, it's great for them because users that click on their content in that social card will have already chosen that they want to interact with one of their pieces of content. So they're getting highly qualified users coming through to their app. So we're really excited at Google about app activities, and this really just represents the start. So I would encourage you to take a look at them and watch this space. So I'm going to give you back to Wes, and he's going to show us how easy it is to add app activities to our app.
So once you have a signed-in user, it's really simple to send app activity to Google. So let's say in this case, I've sent Lee a post about listening to some music, and he's started to listen to the music. And now we're going to record app activities that are listen activities to record the fact that he was listening to music in our app. First, we want to configure the content. This is going to be a target for the moment. On Android, app activities are called moments. I don't know if you've ever tried to name a model class activity on Android, but it's not a good idea. So we specify the content using this item scope. And item scope is a really wide interface because it's meant to support any type of content that your app might write. But the important bits here are the ID. That's going to be a deep link ID, just like we had in the interactive post case. It's going to have some meaning to your app. And then the type. In our case, the type is music recording. So we're listening to a song. Then given that type, we'll set some metadata here. We'll set the title and the description and the thumbnail so that Google knows how to render this thing. Now that we have the content configured, we'll create a moment that has a activity and the content. So since we listened to the song, we can write a listen activity. Now it's really important that this listen activity, we mentioned it on an earlier slide when we were configuring our Plus client. This way, Lee has already consented to send listen activities to Google, so we know that we can write these activities in a passive way. We build the moment, and then we call write moment. And write moment is really cool, because the same way that you called load people and Google Play Services took care of everything, write moment takes care of offline. So if you have a signed-in user and you call write moment, and the user's offline, the next time they go online, the moment will be written. And this is a really cool, because with Google Play Services, we can offer this sort of deeper integration and more complex stuff. So, great, thanks.
Cool. Thanks very much. So, as you can see, integrating Google Plus Sign-In is incredibly easy, and it includes a bunch of great features for Android developers. It helps you to enhance the experience for your users in your app by providing personalization data and access to their social graph. It helps you to grow your audience through targeted sharing and the features in interactive posts. And it makes it really easy for your users to get your app with features like over-the-air install. So if you'd like to know more, we're going to hold a panel discussion upstairs right after this session with some of the partners that have integrated Google Plus Sign-In into their Android apps. So please come up and have a chat with us up there. But thank you very much for listening. If you want to find out more, take a look at our developer documentation at developers.google.com/plus. There you'll find great documentation, but also samples, including our quick starts. They'll get you up and running with this stuff in just 5 minutes. We're going to hold a code lab tomorrow where we take you from nothing to a server-side component and an Android client which has integrated Google Plus Sign-In in just 2 hours. I'll be running that along with my colleague, Gus Klass, and Wes will be there as well. So if you're interested, please come along to that. And we would very much like your feedback. So use the QR code on the slide or the one over by the door, and you can give us feedback about this session. Wes and I would love to hear from you. We've got a few minutes to take some questions. So if you would like to ask a question, please do so, but come up to the mics. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks.
Hello.
Hey.
I have a quick question. If you want your app to use another scope, like to get tasks or something else.
Can I get you to speak up slightly, sorry?
Sorry?
Speak up slightly, sorry.
You hear me?
Yep, that's great.
Okay. So if you want your app to use something like another scope, like tasks or something like that,
yep.
How do you handle the token? Do you have to cache it, or like, how does it work?
So that will depend on your app. As you saw in the examples, you create this Plus client, and you have the option to add scopes at the point that you create the Plus client. Once you've done that, you can use Google Auth utils to pull out the token, and that's an access token, so it's long-lived for the length of an access token. You can, depending on how you want to access it, you may need to cache it yourself. You do, at the point that you've pulled the token out, you do have to manage it yourself. So at some point, you may start to get 401s or 403s because the token has expired, at which point you'll need to use Google Play Services to get another token. I don't know if you want to add anything.
It works exactly the same way as the Google authentication service of Google's like Play services right now. Like if you don't want to use Google Plus, but you just use the authentication service, like the usual dialogue with the Google accounts and stuff like that?
Yeah, so once you've connected your Plus client with this state where you have all of your scopes specified, the user's consented. So when you use Google Auth Util to get a token, you'll get one without any kind of user interaction required. So there won't be any notifications or anything after that. Okay. That token's cached for an hour on the client for you. So anytime you make a call to get token, you can use that token. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Yeah, sure. And my other quick question is, what's the flow if the user is not registered on Google Plus at all? Like, what do you show when you?
So if the user's not registered on Google Plus, then they'll be taken to the Google Plus app, and they'll have the option to upgrade.
Okay.
So there is an upgrade flow.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so does this work? Yeah. My question is, are we required to use the Google Plus sign-in button for layouts, or can we just make our own button without the Google Plus branding?
No, so the Google Plus button is provided really for convenience. I mean, from your perspective, one of the things that you need to consider is that a lot of reasons why people want to use Google Plus Google as a social identity provider is because they trust it. And so by using our branding, you help to confer the level of trust to the user. But if you want to use your own button, you're entirely welcome to do so. One of the main advantages of using the Google Plus button is that it provides all the localization for you. So that makes it very easy. But no, there's absolutely no reason why you can't use your own button.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, so segueing on that a little bit, what I find that I'm experiencing is I'm trying to integrate Google Plus within enterprise. But I kind of don't want to make it seem too social, you know, because I wouldn't want the client to feel like they're exposing their internal communications.
Sure.
But the infrastructure of Google Plus is well done, very good to associate the users, you know, and create a great experience for what we're trying to do in terms of getting a company who has individuals on different coasts to integrate within an experience. Is there anything or anywhere or anyone you could suggest that would, you know, can provide some guidelines for Google Plus within enterprise without it seeming too playful, for lack of a better word? So
that's quite a broad question. What I would encourage you to do, actually, is to come over to the sandbox after the session, and we can talk in more detail. Okay. We've only got a minute, so right. It's quite a broad question to answer right now.
All right, cool beans.
Thanks.
Okay. What if a user has multiple accounts and he switch between this account? If application can know about that?
Yep. Sorry, can I get you to speak up slightly? Sorry.
What if user have multiple account and he switch between this account?
Yeah.
And if there is any chance application know about that?
So the question is, how do you handle multiple accounts with Google Plus sign-in? Yeah. So if the device, in the case of Android specifically, if the device has multiple accounts on it, then the very first time someone tries to sign in, the pending intent, so the connection result that we saw in the examples, will contain a pending intent that displays an account chooser. So the user gets to pick which account they want to sign in with at that point. Now, at that point, a default account for the app will be decided. And that will stay the default account every time they open the app until they choose to sign out. So if you take a look at our examples, one of the things that we recommend you do is that when the user signs out, you clear the default account for that app. At which point, the next time someone tries to sign in, you'll again get the account chooser, and they can pick the one they want to use.
Okay.
If you have anything to add to that.
No, that's about it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
I think.
Okay, we've got one more question.
This one's pretty easy. I didn't notice when you're first coming into the app, what can I use to determine if I should even show in the sign-in button? How do I know if they're already signed in?
How do you know they're already signed in?
Yeah, like, you're saying, here's how you show the sign-in button. If they're already signed in, I don't need to.
So if you tie the lifecycle of the Plus client object to your activity, the way we suggested here, then when you call start or you call connect on start, the Plus client will actually try to authenticate the user immediately, and if they are signed in, it will return you straight away to onConnected. So if you've built your flow so that when you get onConnected back, you display the signed in experience, then as soon as they come into the app, you'll get that call. So you can, it should work from your app's sort of design. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Sure, no problem. All right, thanks very much, guys. If you've got any more questions, please come over and have a chat in the sandbox area. Thank you.